This is Talk the Devils, the athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up today, we were back to earth with a bump at Brentford after another defeat. Benjamin Sesko did get his first United goal, but that did, of course, little to paper over the cracks, as there are deep questions once again about the direction of the team and the position of Ruben Amorim as well. We've got a full house. Andy Mitten's in a slightly different location. If you can hear teacups and coffee machines, then that's because he's sat in a cafe in Italy. We'll talk about that a bit later. Laurie and Carl are here as well. They're just at home. Andy, you were at Brentford. I have to say, our email inbox, our DMs on social media, wherever you look really, there is a groundswell of opinion about the future of Ruben Amorim, and not much of it is positive at all, to be honest.
Yeah, the positive, I think, came before the game. I was stood outside the away end. There's one of the smallest in the Premier League, only 1,700, and I think I saw all 1,700 people walk past me, and there was optimism, and that came from beating Chelsea. It came from the fact that Brentford was struggling, that they'd had a full week to prepare for the game, and we all know what happens next. United conceded two shocking goals. And there certainly wasn't optimism after. I can totally understand the strength of feeling, the loss of faith in Ruben Amorim. Its attitudes have hardened, I think, in the last couple of months. I think at the start of this season, United fans were having him. They cut him a huge amount of slack last year, but I think there's very few United fans now who would like the manager, either like the manager to stay or feel that he is the man to get things right. And so many people say to me, I really wanted it to work out, or even I really want it to work out for him, but this is just not working out. And it was shambolic at Brentford on Saturday. It didn't even look like a Manchester United team. I'm sure we're going to talk about that more.
It's like Groundhog Day, Carl, isn't it, to be honest? We've been here and done this podcast so many times already, it feels like, and that's just with Ruben Amorim, let alone some of the other head coaches and managers of the past. But this definitely felt like it was dragging United back and dragging us all back to somewhere that we hoped we wouldn't go again. And the fact that they have been dragged back there again, I think, is probably why so many people have lost faith, as Andy's just said there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ollie Kay wrote the match piece over the weekend, and he offered, it's not quite one step forward and two steps back, but sometimes you feel like you're taking even more steps back. One of the big questions with every single Manchester United manager or head coach since 2013 is they are more or less asked, when do you think the team's going to get good? When do you think this team is going to be worthy of challenging for a Premier League title, if not winning one outright? And it feels as if we are further away than ever right now under Ruben. And the appetite to continue with him and his methods is waning. It's tedious, right? This is if you're a Manchester United fan, you've been made to eat a lot of really bad vegetables, and you're wondering where the dessert is coming, and it just doesn't seem to be anywhere near in sight. I
like vegetables, but yeah, fair point. Laurie, the problem is, there's been a lot of support for him. We've done our best to be positive as well at times, even with a bit of criticism coming our way for how positive we've been. But that was just so bad, wasn't it? I mean, I don't really know how else to phrase it in a way, because you just didn't expect it to be like that again. And then when it did go that way, you're just not surprised. And that's the biggest indictment, really, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we asked, didn't we, after the Chelsea game, could they start the next game with the same intensity, the same aggression, determination, creativity? No, was the answer, because Brentford knew what they were coming up against in Manchester United's side. Obviously, it's telegraphed, week after week, isn't it? So Keith Andrews, credit to him, had got a game plan where, you put long balls in, long passes. I mean, there were some excellent passes, you have to say, to get in behind United's defence, but that was obviously the game plan. And you had, a centre forward up front for Brentford who knew what he could do with his body and kind of muscle through and spring the trap, set his run correctly, and therefore United on the back foot. The long throws, we knew they were going to come. I think United probably handled them okay overall, but there was always this sense that Brentford knew how they could hurt United, and the United's efforts were a little bit more in hope than in kind of expectation. And obviously there's loads of subs in the second half, weren't there, where players are getting moved around from position to position. Ruben Amorim trying to do something, but not in a kind of way of having a reliable strategy to fall back on. It was sort of feeling like it was coming up in the moment with these ideas as to, where players were going to be ultimately playing to try and get back into the game. I do think United were obviously, they could have got an equaliser, couldn't they, with Bruno Fernandes if he puts that penalty away, if Nathan Collins is sent off, as I think he should have been. But we're kind of clutching at straws a little bit there, because ultimately Brentford were the better side, certainly could have had more goals in the first half if it had not been for Bayindir. And then that ultimately brings you back to the question of Ruben Amorim, his coaching staff as well, not just him, and this experiment, this kind of tenure that's been going on for so long now, nearly a year. I know that he didn't have his players when he first came in. He's got more of those kind of players now, I think. But yeah, you just need to get results at a better rate than this. You need to be showing a bit more progression than this. Otherwise, people are going to be saying, well, is time up?
Yeah, we'll come back to some of the details of the game a little bit later on, Laurie, but what's the sense that you get from the hierarchy about the opinion still of Ruben Amorim? Because it feels like there is still support within the club for him, and there is mitigation. I know people will probably shout considering what our inbox looked like I said before, but it's still very early days in this season. It's still a team that they're trying to put the pieces together. The front three, for example, started the game together for the first time. And as difficult as it is to see progression, I suppose, that there has been elements this season where we've picked up on it. Carl will shout at me now because of the data, but, there has been things that we've said, look, well, this feels a little bit better. That looks a little bit better. But this just felt like a huge step backwards. And what do you think the club's opinion is?
I think they're in a bit of a bind because they've hired this guy. This is the first kind of statement of their intent as to what they want to do as a football operation. So you have Sir Jim Ratcliffe at the very top, who is involved, and you can question, well, certainly whether that's the correct thing. If he's asking sort of questions about the football side of things, should he be really doing that, or should he be leaving it to the people that you've appointed in those positions? Then you've got, Omar Barada, the chief executive, who we believe pushed for Ruben Amorim when there was that debate around who they're going to go for. You had Dan Ashworth there, the sporting director at the time, recommending people with Premier League experience, maybe taking more of a data-led approach to it, which I think sort of Ratcliffe didn't really appreciate. You think he wanted somebody of Ashworth's sort of standing at the club to just say, this is who we're going to go for. I think that's what Barada did. Jason Wilcox, as the technical director at the time, now the director of football, I think he did have some questions about whether a back three system would work when they were first floating the Ruben Amorim proposition when Ten Hag around the FA Cup final, the first time they were looking at his position. Then he got more on board with it and absolutely has a very good relationship with him. I think we saw that at the Stockport train station, didn't we, where they were sort of laughing and joking. That being said, I do think there's obviously conversations that go on around what can we do to make this team get better results more quickly. And I do, for all that I think that if you then, if Ruben Amorim goes, does that bring the spotlight on Omar Barada, on Jason Wilcox, on other people that were involved in getting to this point? So I think that's why they would ultimately want to see it through. And I think they do feel like it could still work. But I think you're getting to a point now where those questions are going to be coming louder and louder. And ultimately results will dictate it. And we've said this for a while now. Brentford, a loss to them is a really bad one. So, what's the answer at Sunderland at the weekend? They've started the season pretty well. So I think it's fragile. I do think that they, want it to work because they know what the ramifications are. But I feel that, you can't ignore the results if they continue like this.
Laurie makes a lot of relevant points. It's a results business. Manchester United are not getting the results. There's been a lot of support for Ruben Amorim from the fans, from the club. He has a close relationship with Jason Wilcox. They speak all of the time. They agree, they disagree. That's absolutely fine. Omar Barada is obviously very close to them as well. So you could see it as a plus that there is this close group at the start of the club, and then they also meet, with Sir Alex Ferguson, with David Gill for routine meetings like last week. But results dictate absolutely everything. And that was a massive setback at Brentford on Saturday. I'm watching this United team thinking there's more flow here in a river with no water. This is just nowhere near good enough. So it can't carry on. And if it carries on like this, I do think the coach will lose his job. And I think a new coach will be brought in with his own ideas. I don't make that decision. The fans don't make that decision. But the club are not stupid. And it hasn't been good enough. And I don't know what happens next. People say to me, he's got to go now. He's given up. He can't survive the weekend. I can see why people are saying that. I can see the frustration. I can see the anger. But I'm not the one who is making that decision. I think people would have loved it to work out for Ruben Amorim, but it just isn't.
Yeah, he's a likeable person. I mean, he's a likeable head coach to deal with, to be honest. I mean, we've talked a lot about the way he comes across, about, some of the honesty, the openness. Obviously, the relationship with the fans is good, or has been good along the way. The premise of patience, Carl, is something that I think everyone connected with Manchester United has wanted to have and still wants to have, to be honest. It's just the fact that the results have really tested that in a big way. So I had a look last night at a bit of a comparison for recent examples and also Manchester United examples of where patience has been shown and better things relatively have come for the club. So Amorim's on a record of 34 points from his first 33 Premier League games. And the first comparison that gets drawn is usually Mikel Arteta at Arsenal, because he didn't have a brilliant start either, and he has built Arsenal now up to a team who can at least challenge for the Premier League title. He took 47 points in his first 33 games, and that mark was hit in the middle of a run of losing 8 of 12 league games, which was probably the biggest test that he faced early on as Arsenal manager. Jurgen Klopp's another one who took Liverpool from one of their lowest ebbs in the Premier League and turned them into English and European champions. He took 52 points from his first 33 Premier League games. And the other one that I always hear is, well, look what happened with Sir Alex at the start of his time in charge of Manchester United. Now, this is pre-Premier League, of course. We're going back to 1986 when he was appointed. But Ferguson took 51 points from his first 33 league games. So the closest one is Arteta, and he's still 13 points behind him.
Yep. And if you speak to a lot of Arsenal fans, quite a few of them will say Arteta probably managed to stay in place through that bad December period because those games were during COVID and there was lockdown, and you didn't have the visual of a bunch of fans booing him after a defeat. And he's right, this isn't good enough. Ruben Amorim has been in charge for 33 Premier League matches and he's won 9 of them. He has not won back-to-back Premier League games. The reasons to keep him in place have more to do with ifs and faith and possibilities and, well, who else would you bring in right now, and possible financial compensation, whereas the reasons to draw a line under it and say this is not good enough are a little bit more substantial than what we have, than the other side. I keep thinking about this phrase: the longer you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive it is to go back home. And this, I do not believe the Ruben Amorim project at Manchester United will be a success, because the ultimate aim of the project is, if not to win a Premier League, but to put a successful foundation so your successor can win a Premier League. And this is just a mass deterioration of what was already a pretty shaky and rocky foundation left by Erik ten Hag. The football's not good. I don't see any players improving. The players who are promising and emerging don't seem to be platformed properly. I don't enjoy watching this Manchester United team, and there's not much new learning I can give you after a defeat. Why did Manchester United lose? Well, because they played the same way that they played last week, only this time they did it against 11 players instead of 10. And we can talk about whether or not there should have been a red card, but is that what he needs to win back-to-back Premier League games, to play against 10 every single week?
Well, I suppose the counter-argument to that would be, that there was the stat going around the other week that United hadn't beaten a team that weren't down to 10 men, or they weren't given a penalty against in the Premier League. Well, they've forced the issue with those scenarios.
Sure.
I mean, the red card for Chelsea was United forcing the issue. Winning a penalty is not usually something that's gifted to you either. So, but I understand the point, Carl. Yeah,
it's really hard, and I said after the derby, do you think the juice is worth the squeeze? And I don't. And I understand the moderate argument that you want to back the manager. And I would ask the moderates, and I'd ask everyone here on this podcast, are we backing the manager, as in the position, is this to use the American politics term, are you respecting the office, or are we backing Ruben Amorim, the individual, with the faith that this individual is capable not just of turning it around to mere competence, but also to a point of thriving and brilliance in charge of a Manchester United team? Because I do not believe that is possible. I do not believe he's capable of meeting the moment and behaving in a manner that we expect of a Manchester United head coach, because you need to win games, loads of them in a row, and start winning pots. And he looks to me entirely incapable of doing that.
Okay, well, let's take a breath and then we'll get into some of the detail of the defeat at Brentford. Andy, I knew it was going to be a bad day when I saw the yellow socks and the yellow shorts. I don't know about you. Didn't get any better, did it?
Nah, got up at 5 o'clock on Saturday. The sun rose. It was a beautiful day. United were going to win again. The mood was among the fans. I'm not going to say it was euphoric, because that'd be absolutely ridiculous, but there was genuine optimism there when the team came out. I think there were their eyebrows raised. People started flashing it around, going, why is the new goalkeeper not starting, for example? Why is Ugarte starting? But then the front three were starting for the first time. And then the game started. And we've seen this film so many times before. It was a huge game on Saturday. It was a really, really big game. It's one thing measuring yourself against the teams who are going to win the league or compete for the league title. Brentford had a crisis of their own. Brentford had the poorest start to the season since the days when they were getting 6,000. And given the noise inside that ground on Saturday, it's like they still get 6,000. I don't know whether Premier League teams in West London are banned from creating a good atmosphere. I said last week, Chelsea were terrible at Old Trafford. Fulham were poor. And Brentford were poor. Brentford's a really successful, well-run club. It has many virtues. And I don't know whether they give like sticking tape when you walk through the turnstiles so that you're not allowed to open your mouth. And in the 90th minute, they just peeled it off and started singing to Brian and Bumo. Should have signed for a big club. Brian wants to score. All that sort of stuff. Not even smiling when I'm saying this, because it was an awful watch. It was a really bad watch. And Laurie was right about the tactical system. Brentford did it, lovely passes. But it was awful just to see De Ligt, Maguire, the defence just being turned. And the goals, they were really bad goals to concede. And when your team goes 2-0 down with 2 quick goals, really difficult to come back from that. I saw Milan, Napoli last night, the same thing happened. Even though Napoli dominated the game, they couldn't get back from the 2 quick goals from Milan. Manchester United nearly did get back. United got a penalty. There's another talking point there, which we'll come to. The penalties that are not being converted. You can talk about these what ifs, these little moments, but the greater picture is it's just not good enough. And you can analyse individual performances, you can analyse the positives and the negatives. You know, Bayern made some really good saves and at other times looked like he wasn't ready. And it was just a really bad day. Really, really poor performance where I'm watching it and I'm thinking, I'm not even enjoying this. This team is giving me so little joy. Just doesn't look like a Manchester United team at all. And you're watching the manager and I'm thinking, either he's tensed up, because I was at the press conference the day before, pretty relaxed, comes across okay. You made a point of saying that you'd seen him joking at Stockport Station. I asked the manager after the game, how'd you stop being so inconsistent? And you get an answer, and I'm torn between thinking, this is waffle, and actually he's communicating really well. And the messages now, I'm feeling like it's mixed, verging towards negative. We can talk about the game. I'm sure you saw it. I'm sure you got your own opinions.
Yeah, I mean, you know all about waffle, Andy. So I'm surprised that you didn't manage to discern exactly what he was talking. But I think your point about his manner it does have an impact, right? You know, the kind of feet up on the dugout at one point. obviously at Brentford, he was sort of staring at the ground. Obviously, the tactics board at Grimsby. These are kind of elements that I think do feed into, what players think of what's coming back from the hierarchy. I do think you've got issues with the coaching staff, in terms of their ages. I know we've touched on it before, but their experience, their abilities to negotiate this kind of difficult scenario. And so then you're sort of asking questions as to what it means for the overall picture, because I do think that United in parts had some nice moments, right? The bit that released Bryan Mbeumo for the penalty was a lovely bit of play, and I think to Ian's point from earlier, that's obviously Mbeumo was forcing the red card against Chelsea, so these are attacking moments that have only been halted.
Well, he would have
by
scored
people.
if he'd not been pulled back.
Exactly, it should have been a red card.
That's why it's a penalty.
It's obviously a red card. He's not even made any attempt to play the ball. Even Collins himself after the game was saying, tactical, and kind of he knew the look on his face. He knew he should have been sent off.
Well, did you see the X account thing? When they do like a sense check on a tweet, if there's like something in it which is questionable or isn't factual.
Right, what do you call it? Common.
So they sort of questioned what had been put out as a reasoning for why there wasn't a red card, even like the automatic response thing. I don't know, the rights and wrongs of that.
Because he didn't have control of the ball, but how can you get control of the ball if you're being pulled back? He literally would have just put the ball in the back of the net. It's Bryan Mbeumo on his left foot. But, I think...
Manchester... It's Manchester United. It's Manchester United 25-26.
Okay, he's ballooning the ball over, so we've got a better chance of scoring with the Bruno penalty. But I mean, obviously the delay then, Bruno, he does seem to get affected by delays, and Keith Andrews making those subs, sort of tactical subs. I don't know if we should clear up quickly that's allowed, but I think, I don't know personally, because Mark Noble, for example, was sent on by David Moyes, I think, right, for West Ham against United to take a penalty that David De Gea then saved. So you obviously can do that if a goalkeeper gets sent off. Often a goalkeeper will be sent on, but that was clearly gamesmanship, and I think the referee could have probably said, no, let's have the penalty first before.
It was the fact that it came after all of the assessment, wasn't it? That then it delayed it even further. But
the point I was sort of getting to is that they're sort of glimpses. We get these sort of moments or surges maybe in games where United feel like they're doing something, but then the kind of pattern, the underlying pattern of it is players not really knowing exactly what to do in certain circumstances, which I think is where you get to Kobbie Mainoo coming onto the pitch, and he dallies on the ball, doesn't he? He could have just passed it out to Bruno Fernandes. Instead, he sort of tries to control it, miscontrols it, fires a pass in as a last gasp, and then all of a sudden Brentford are on the counter attack and United are dishevelled. But I think that's personally a consequence of not necessarily being totally comfortable with this system and with the instructions that are coming from the manager.
Yeah, they are ultimately the two sides of the coin, Carl, aren't they? Because I think the biggest defence of Ruben Amorim, or the biggest sense of mitigation for how it's gone so far this season, is that there's been moments where United should have done better, and that would have changed the result that they ended up suffering. So at the weekend, if Bruno Fernandes scores the penalty, it's 2-2 with 15 minutes to go, whatever it was. And United have got a chance of turning it around completely and winning. Away at Fulham, missing the penalty gives them a chance to go ahead in the first half, and maybe the result of that game is not a draw. Missed chances against Arsenal, okay, maybe not clear-cut ones, but then you look at the errors, an individual error against Arsenal with Bayindir from the corner. Even at the weekend, the first two goals, that's just lapses of concentration or people making the wrong choice. There's question marks over the goalkeeper, unquestionably. I think for maybe all three goals, in fairness.
The first one.
I just thought he could have engaged. I don't know why he stayed back. I thought he could have come forward,
shoot off his line, and try and close an angle. Absolutely.
As soon as he sees Thiago beat the offside trap, for me, then I think, right, on your bike, go and close him down as much as possible. Like with Sanchez the week before, which obviously he then fouled Bryan Mbeumo. I wouldn't have wanted Bayindir to do that, clearly. But the idea of coming out to engage and trying to sweep up or cover, maybe it's harsh. Maybe it is harsh, but in an ideal world, I thought he could have. It's a hell of a finish, to be fair to him. So, of all the things to criticise at the weekend,
the shot, I thought that you just meant this. Yeah, he could have dived and tipped it around the post, but yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I don't think anyone's stopping that, are they? To be fair, but that's the thing, one side of it, you're looking at individual moments and you're saying, right, that error's been made there in a defensive sense, in an attacking sense. And that's not a failure of the system. And that's not a failure of Ruben Amorim's approach. That's just individuals making the wrong choice or committing an error. But then on the other side of it, Carl, is the fact that, is that because it's not quite flowing and functioning? And when they do make a mistake, it feels like it gets punished, where you said it a few weeks ago, so much has to go right for Manchester United to score a goal. It feels like it almost has to be perfection. And at the other end, they go in so easily.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a good way to set a team up. I totally understand the argument. If Bruno Fernandes scores the penalty against Fulham, do Manchester United go on to win that game? If Cunha doesn't hit the post in certain games, does this happen? And maybe, right? These are maybes and hypotheticals. And unfortunately, we can't peek into that ideal world or that better universe, because we have to.
If those
live in
maybes
this
had been
one.
different, though, Carl, would we be having this conversation?
No. If those maybes had been different, we'd be talking about, hopefully, a team that is on the up. But unfortunately, we're in this reality where United's luck isn't working. At best, we can say the luck is neutral, because United are winning penalties. They're just not converting them, if you want to call it that way. And one thing that stuck out for me, particularly watching the Brentford game, was in the lead up to the penalty, TNT Sport cut to a Man United fan, a poor woman who was praying to the heavens.
It's just cruel.
It's
just cruel.
And now, I'm going to ask you a question, Annie. You need to hold my hand if I'm just reading into this too much. I pray around penalty shootouts quite often. And my mum tells me I shouldn't, because Red Devils, God, blah, 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 blah. But normally, when I'm praying for a penalty for Manchester United, it's April time. There's just a little bit more on the line. And there was a moment when I'm looking at this woman pray, and I'm looking at Ruben Amorim on the touchline, and I'm going, this is a team gripped by fear. This woman is so fearful. She's so fearful about what might happen if this penalty isn't converted, that she's praying to the heavens. Ruben Amorim looks completely, he can't look. He doesn't have the mental fortitude, or he's not able to sort of exude the confidence that a team desperately needs at this moment, in this crucial moment. And for some reason, Bruno Fernandes' penalty powers seem to have abandoned him. And it's a team that is very fearful of the methods they're trying to do. And I think this leads to loads of individual mistakes. It's a team that it has a lot of indecision. And I think that is now playing into the parts that used to be good, that aren't good anymore. So I would love to know why Bruno Fernandes has abandoned his hop, skip and a jump technique for now these more powered run-ups.
He's varied it for a while, though, hasn't he?
He has
varied it for a while.
I'd be curious to know why he's moving away from a technique that was so good in like 5 years ago. I'd really like to know why he's varied it, because that was working, but this one isn't working. So why have you done that? And it was just a moment where I was looking at United going, why are we so scared? And you're so scared because the previous form hasn't been good, and you're wondering where the next goal is going to come from, and you just need
scar tissue.
Yeah,
said it a few times already.
You just need a little bit of relief, and the little bit of relief isn't coming right now. And it was just I felt for that woman so much in that moment.
The thing is, for Amorim's time, and even before that, the start of last season, it just doesn't feel like there's been time to take a breath. We have lurched, and Andy, I think, said it a few weeks ago, we can't cope with the lurch. Well, that's just what's happening. The results are lurching, the mood's lurching, the faith that you have is lurching, the moral dilemma inside you about patience, no patience, faith, no faith, enjoyment, no enjoyment. Every single week, it seems to be turned on its head.
Absolutely, and I don't.
It's hard to do these podcasts again, in a way. I was sat there after the game on Saturday. I was at the Etihad as well. Ruben Amorim's name's ringing round the Etihad after 2 minutes, the loudest it was all day. And how are we doing this again?
I want to make it very clear. If you have come out of that weekend and you still retain faith in Ruben Amorim and you still think things can come good, I want to make it really clear. I don't think I am any better or worse than you. I'm just in a different camp. And if you are racked by this indecision about, do I have the stomach for this anymore? And you're saying, I don't think I have the stomach for this anymore. I don't think you're any better or worse than someone else. We are all in this weird jumble that none of us expected, because we all hoped that after a summer of more than 200 million spent, something would change in a positive way to a substantial degree. We thought things would get better really quickly, and we wouldn't be again relying on these coin tosses, dice rolls, hypotheticals, these very minute moments in which entire games can be spun. But unfortunately, we are, and that is really difficult. I always think about how, Ian, Laurie, do you have a friend who's just late all the time?
Usually me.
I do have a friend, he's called Laurie, yeah.
Okay. Now, have you ever, with your friend who's late all the time, have you ever started giving them like a fake arrival time? Sort of, we're all meeting at 10:30, but you're all meeting at 11. So you're hoping
I think our producer, Adi, did that for the last studio record, actually. So, yeah.
But that's the sort of organizational or logistical or strategic safety net someone in charge eventually does to compensate for someone's tardiness or someone's weaknesses. And
they did that for Jadon Sancho. Legit. Sorry, Carl. Finish your metaphor.
I'm sorry, you've tickled me there. If you have a friend who's always late, eventually start giving them a slightly fake turn up time, because if I tell them to turn up 30 minutes earlier, they might turn up 50 minutes. They'll be 50 minutes late for that, but I'll still turn up. And I'm wondering this with Ruben Amorim, in that if you have a team that is turning up late, shall we say, late to the moments where you need to be pressing the ball, or late to winning those second balls, or late to doing certain things on the field that are really, really important, what is your safety net? What is your way to lessen that, so that those tiny mistakes don't cause a massive system failure? And I don't see him doing that. And I think that is really, really concerning. I know we've got quite a few emails that were asking why wasn't Lenny Yoro starting. And I think this is also one of the really difficult bits, in that I can totally see why Ruben Amorim started Harry Maguire and Matthias de Ligt beforehand, of just like, okay, Brentford, long throw-ins, set pieces. Let me put two centre-backs in who are good at heading the ball rather than Lenny Yoro. And I think, but then you concede a goal on a counter-attack like that and you're going, I probably wish I had Lenny Yoro because he's a bit quicker. And I think that's also a really bad thing. That's also unfortunate for him as a head coach, in that even when you are trying to fiddle around and lessen your weaknesses, things are coming back to bite you in the backside either way. And it's just a really negative spiral, and I do not see a good way out anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I was thinking as you were talking there, Carl, that the Grimsby game certainly felt like they did not know what they were walking into there, and that is a consequence of obviously not being steeped in the English game, I suppose, even though Amorim said that he'd watched a lot of United games when he was in Portugal. And I felt like maybe at times Brentford was a similar case there, but I accept your point that, Maguire and de Ligt probably were included for those, long throws, set pieces. That's how Brentford are going to try and hurt you. And it feels like they're sort of, trying to compensate for one sort of failing of the team, and another one is popping up a bit like whack-a-mole. But yeah, those substitutions, he obviously does this, doesn't he, where he's kind of got players in mind that he will put on in sort of more deeper positions, shall we say, that then makes it a more aggressive formation. So like a Mason Mount coming on originally, I think, as a number 10, but then shifting to, I think, be a left wing back, unless he did sort of change formation to a 4-3-3 at the end. I think it probably was.
Good luck if you could work it out, to be honest.
This is it, right? And if we...
Especially watching on telly.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, obviously, we're not there every day at Carrington, so maybe they have sort of drilled these kind of roles. But
that's crisis mode.
It felt like, let's just go for it, or let's try a few things. And listen, it worked for Eric Ten Hag against Liverpool in the FA Cup match where he's kind of got Anthony as a left wing back and he's totally changed system. I'm sure that was off the cuff. But if, as you're saying about the lady praying in September time, if you're kind of doing this in an away game to Brentford at this stage of the season, it feels like it feels unsettled. It doesn't feel part of kind of rehearsed strategy, and therefore, how would you expect the players then to conjure something up? I said to you guys, it felt like a 5-0-5 at some points, didn't it? Where you've got just the 5 defenders and then 5 attackers, and I think so. That's the kind of stuff that other people are looking at, outside of the club. Also inside the club, no doubt about it, because you can't get to this stage and accept what's happening and feel like, okay, this is moving somewhere, given how long it's gone on for under Ruben Amorim, if we take his whole tenure into context, not just this season. And I think therefore you're getting probably people in the industry making recommendations. You're at that stage of this particular cycle of a manager where can he fight through it? I'm sure he would like to, even though he does say certain things publicly that kind of make you wonder. But I feel that you're at this point, of a cycle where you're getting people making recommendations and kind of proposing ideas to people at the club. And let's see what the ultimate decision is.
Okay, Laurie, I don't know where Andy's gone, but he's not been on here for a while, as I'm sure people have noticed. His connection's dropped off. So we're going to take a moment, see if we can get Andy back on, and I'm going to say goodbye to you, Laurie, as well, because you need to go. So I appreciate you coming on, and thank you very much.
Nice one. Thanks so much, guys. See you later.
Right, Andy, you're back. I didn't even notice you drop off initially, and then you were off for a while. So maybe let's go back to why are you in a coffee shop in Milan? Because you're Andy Mitten, I guess is the answer. But yeah,
I love it how no one noticed that I'd gone.
No, not initially anyway.
Came to watch several games of football, speak to different footballers, football people, and I came here last year as well. So I watched Sassuolo against Udinese yesterday. Nemanja Matic playing for Sassuolo, and last night I watched Milan against Napoli. I spoke to Scott McTominay after. Kevin De Bruyne, Rasmus Højlund playing for Napoli. Bit of a surprise win for Milan. Amazing atmosphere. We were talking on the Atmosphere podcast a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, I sat in San Siro last night thinking, I just wish Old Trafford could be more like this in terms of the noise. It's just incredible. And the standard of football is not as good as in the Premier League. And it's one point McTominay made to me afterwards. We were just chatting and talking about the overall level in the Premier League, where even the weaker teams are really strong. And this makes it more complicated for Manchester United, because even the teams at the bottom can go for real top players. And that simply didn't used to be the case 20 years ago. And then I've got more interviews, and I'm going to watch Atalanta against Bruges. Milan's a great city. It's a great football city as well. And then Sunderland against Manchester United. Oh, I've got Barcelona PSG on Wednesday. Forgot about that one. And then watching my daughter on Thursday. And then Sunderland at Old Trafford. I've watched Sunderland's only defeat this season at Burnley.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance?
That's the game they lost, isn't it? They've had a superb start.
They've had a superb start. It was a surprise when they came up. They made massive changes. They're a huge club. Sunderland is a proper footballing city. Their infrastructure, the ground holds 48,000. The support has never been in doubt, but they went down and down. They went down to the third tier, and they've had an incredible start. Success for them would be staying up this season. And that game against Burnley did deserve it. I think the promoted teams have started far better than expected. I think you had to wait.
Oh, miles better than recent times.
Yeah.
Miles better.
I think there's a stat that from last year, by October, they'd had hardly any wins between them, and this year they're winning. And I actually think that's good for the league. I was worried that the 3 teams who come up keep going down. I won't be that worried about Sunderland on Saturday afternoon if they were to lose the game. I'd be extremely worried about Manchester United if they were to lose that game.
Yeah, Sunderland are 5th, which is way beyond what anyone expected. We'll preview the Sunderland game properly on Thursday's podcast. But Carl, forget the sort of detail of the game for the moment. Just think about the moment. How big a moment do you think this is, building up to a game before an international break in the time of the season where Manchester United have made changes before? This really does need to be a home victory to ensure that there isn't a fortnight spent with huge question marks over what happens next.
It's massive, absolutely massive. This is. Andy said if Manchester United lose, I think even a draw would be critical for the conversation in and around the club. It's just not. I'm worried about Manchester United in a way I haven't been worried in a long, long time. And unfortunately, when you don't win back-to-back Premier League games, it's hard to get any sort of flow. It's learner driver, bad clutch. There you go.
Talking from experience.
How do you know?
Did have some lessons in London. He did say that.
Now, please forgive me if this is me drinking too much coffee, reading too much into things. I like Ruben Amorim to be just a little bit better in his press conferences before and after now. If Andy is going, he's talking really well, but I can't tell it's waffle, then I think that is also feeding into the mood. And I said before, the mood is not helped by the fact your head coach is constantly talking about his job security and is inviting those questions as well. Laurie used the term, the wagons are circling. Previously, when a Manchester United manager's had a bad run of form, they've been a little bit more bullish in their press conferences and a little bit more, we just need to crack on and do our jobs. I like a little bit more of that. I like a little bit more oomph. Now, that's incredibly hard from a manager who perhaps doesn't have the winning record to throw his weight around just a little bit. But I think a good pre-match press conference can also feed into a better mood, which can feed into hopefully a more positive mood before the game kicks off at Old Trafford, which can also, and again, the sort of positive domino effect. I hope that makes sense there.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It does. I want to finish on a positive if we can. It's probably the only positive in some ways from the match at Brentford, but I feel like, at least leave people with something to feel even remotely pleased about. Benjamin Sesko getting his first Manchester United goal, Andy. We hoped that it would spark a comeback. In the end, it just meant, the 007 memes can die another day, which, if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, you probably are older than the people who make those memes on social media. All of us, I think, are older than them, actually. But anyway, he's put the 0 goals, 0 assists in his first 7 games to bed and left other players to suffer that instead. But Andy, when you think about what needs to happen next, figures like Sesko stepping up, scoring goals, moving United on, that is the only way out of this, isn't it? And no matter what happens in the dugout, no matter what the Sunderland result is and so on, these players have to be the ones that lead Manchester United forward. I mean, I listened to Cunha after the game. I listened to De Ligt after the game, both of them saying, forget the manager, it's about us. When we go out there on the pitch, it's for us to deliver. And that is a really strong message.
Yeah, it wasn't Ruben Amorim who didn't score that penalty. Some of it absolutely has to be on the players. Some of the mistakes were basic on Saturday. But if you want to be positive, Sesko did score, turned the ball in. I think it was his 3rd attempt just before half an hour.
It's going in one way or another.
It was terrible goalkeeping as well.
Yeah, true, yeah.
But I do like the way that he holds the ball up. I do think he's good in the air. I think he's got clean feet, if that makes sense. I am optimistic for him as a footballer, as I am with the other new signings. I just don't want him to be sucked into this Manchester United vortex of negativity. That's my worry about them. It's the pressure that comes with it. Ruben Amorim on Saturday said we played Brentford's game. Okay, that's factually correct. He simply wouldn't get away with saying we played Sunderland's game at Old Trafford. There are certain things you can say and certain things that you can't say. And when I'm watching Bruno Fernandes, the captain, the saviour last season, he's not playing as well, anything like as well as he was last term. I think there's room for improvement all over the place. But this is a mark of a lack of confidence. But what baffles me is I know for a fact they were training really well last week. I know that the manager was motivated. I know that he was on the ball last week because multiple people have told me that's why people went into that game against Brentford, a huge game, a must-win game or must-perform game, because the performance was even worse than the result. But you want to finish on a positive. Yeah, okay. Sesko to score a hat-trick against Sunderland on Saturday. I'd love these things to happen. But I'm concerned. I think all Manchester United fans are concerned because they know what they're watching with their own eyes. And these are really difficult times for Manchester United. We're not being accurate with our listeners and our viewers if we pretend that it's something that it isn't. We can't falsely claim that things are okay when they're clearly not okay.
No, concern seems to be the right word, and I think that's the right place to leave it as well. So, Andy, I'll let you get back to being confused about why you've been given a shot of coffee with some hot water. You can take the lad out of Ernston, can't you? And Carl, thank you for being with us as well. Andy, enjoy the rest of your trip. We'll speak to you all again. We'll see you all again on Thursday as we build up to that game against Sunderland. But thank you for being with us for this one, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already. Like the video and also get involved in the comments too. And click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Carl Anker and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X and TikTok. Thanks for watching.